Chapter 21. Here we're going to learn some things about what Isadora's life was like in Abismo before she left. It's pretty intense. The truck sped down the bridge and away from them. He's gone. Max felt the tension seep from his body. Tears spilled down Isadora's dusty cheeks, leaving muddy tracks. I can't go back. I can't. Listen, it's going to take that man at least an hour to get to the next village. Then he'll have to go talk to the police. And then it will take another hour to return to this spot. 2 hours, probably more. We'll be far upriver by then and at the hidden bridge tomorrow morning. But we have to get moving. Isadora's sobs seemed to root her in place. How did Chuy console his sisters? Sometimes he bribed them with ice cream or candy, or told them a joke, or promised to show them something they'd never seen before. Arroro, shh, shh, said Max. You know, Isadora, I want to get to the next safe place too. And do you know why? Well, I have a big secret. He held out his hand and she took it, letting him help her up. Let's walk and I'll tell you something I've never told anyone before. She took a shaky breath. Not even your best friend? Max shook his head. Not even my best friend. Do you want me to tell you about him? She wiped her face with her hem and nodded. Well, his name is Chuy. Max talked fast about how Chuy buzzed his hair, his little sisters, the water hole, their dreams of football. The memories flooded Max with something rich and sweet like leche quemada. Then Max remembered what he'd said to Chuy about being like a stray dog following Ortiz. He wished he could take back those words and hoped Chuy would forgive him. You see, you have Rosalina, but I never had a sister or a brother, someone with almost all the same memories. The closest thing I have is Chuy. Then why doesn't he know your secret? She asked. Max paused. Why hadn't he told Chuy? He could trust him not to tell. Why had he wasted time being jealous and angry? I'll tell him when I get home, but I'll tell you first. Are you running away? She asked. Do you live with someone awful who scares you? No, Papa is kind, and so is Buelo. They love me very much. So does Tio and my aunties. They all love me. Isadora looked at him with big, earnest eyes. You're lucky. Max felt a pang in his chest for everything he had that Isadora didn't. Suddenly his problems felt small. What's the secret? She asked. Max hesitated. Should he tell her? Maybe it would make her feel better, knowing his mother was from Abismo too, and that he had struggles in spite of all the good things in his life. My mother was a hidden one. Like me and Rosalina? Max nodded. She left when I was a baby. He lifted the compass. This was hers. Her mother gave it to her. So she would always know the way, said Isadora. Max smiled. Maybe. She lost it and Papa found it after she left. She gave it to me. I want to talk to the guardabarrera to see if she knows how I can find my mother in Mañana Land. Once Max started talking, he couldn't seem to stop. He told Isadora all the rest about the papers his mother took and how she stole a piece of Papa's spirit, and that he wanted to know what would become of him. Isadora squeezed Max's hand. The guardabarrera will know how to find her. Yes, said Max. That's what I'm counting on. For the rest of the afternoon, Max pretended to stay focused on the route, but inside he was jittery, nervous. In this remote area, there were no footbridges, and the spans were all connected by roads, which meant trucks and cars could pass. He kept looking for the man in the green truck, trying hard not to let Isadora sense his anxiety. When they stopped for a short break, he pulled out the map and studied it again, making sure they were staying as far away from the roads as much as possible. He glanced at Isadora, who was leaning against a tree, eyes closed, her tiny hands petting Churro. How far could she travel today before she was too tired to go on, or before it grew dark? The weight of what he had undertaken pressed in on him. Isadora kept up, stoic and determined. By dusk, they had made it to the next resting place marked on the map, beneath the canopy of a giant willow tree near the river. They settled for their last night, Lola between them as always. Thick, low limbs splayed above them, and thin, leafy branches dipped towards the ground like draperies, hiding them from the world. Isadora examined the tear in her dress. "I could fix it if I had better light." "You can sew?" Max exclaimed. She was so little. She pulled the wooden box from her pocket and opened it. Inside were a pair of mending scissors, a few needles, a thread, a handful of buttons, and a thimble. Her voice was soft. "Mommy taught us. My seams aren't as straight as Rosalina's yet, but someday I'll be a good seamstress. At night while we sewed, my papi worked on his carvings and told us stories. I always begged him for one more story." "No wonder you like stories," said Max. "My mother made curtains at the factory, and my father fixed the machines. They worked long hours. It was a sad place. Then after, well, me and Rosalina didn't have any place to go." "You mean after your parents died?" asked Max. "Yes." At first Isadora talked slowly, as if the words were steep mountains she had to climb. "The police said we could stay together if we cleaned house for a very important man. He promised to let us go to school, but he never did. I begged him every day. He didn't like that. One day he grabbed my hand to make me stop asking, and he twisted it." She winced. It broke. Max's stomach turned. Poor Isadora. Her breathing quickened and her words spewed out. "Rosalina called the doctor, but he couldn't put a cast on it until it wasn't swollen anymore. He made me a sling from a sweater and asked me how did it happen. The important man didn't want me to talk, but I told anyway, and he was very angry. He said I was lying." Her eyes pleaded. "I wasn't. I promise." She chewed on her bottom lip. "I believe you," said Max. Isadora sat up and leaned forward. "The doctor whispered to us that the man wanted to marry Rosalina when she turned 14. That was only in a few weeks. Rosalina started to cry. The doctor said someone would come and help us soon." "Did someone come?" asked Max. "Yes. The next day the cook came from church and said the priests needed us to sew vestments. You know, the clothes they wear in the church, because they heard we were good with the needle. He said I couldn't sew, but the cook said I could do hoop work with one hand and that it was very important church business. She took us to the house next to the chapel, but I never sewed anything. A guardian that came that night to take Rosalina. I begged to go too, but the doctor wouldn't let me until he put a cast on my arm. For a month I couldn't do much except pick flowers from the garden and arrange them for the church. Every night I cried for Rosalina, but I didn't make any noise. The cook said it was fine to cry, but I had to do it silently so I wouldn't be found." "Did that man ever come looking for you?" 2 times he came, and the cook told him to go away because there was still sewing to do. Then he came again, and he was very angry. He yelled he was coming back to get us on the next Saturday. He didn't know Rosalina was already gone. The next night the doctor cut off my cast and took me to a safe place." "What was the cook going to say when the man returned?" "That we disappeared." "You must have been so scared," said Max. "I wasn't scared of leaving. I was scared of staying with that man." Isadora laid down and gazed into the branches. "This is a good tree," she said. "We hid in the trees." Max thought back to the mural on the wall of the tower. "When you were running away?" She nodded. "People searched for runaways in the forest. The guardian saw them coming, so we climbed high in the branches and held on tight. We couldn't make a sound. The searchers walked right underneath us. I tried not to look down. I didn't even blink my eyes. After we were safe, though, I couldn't stop shaking and crying." Max's throat tightened and he choked out the words. Isadora, you are the bravest person I know. The evening grew darker. Isadora yawned. After the forest, Father Romero came for me. She pulled the kitten closer. I found Churro on the way to that beautiful tower. I wish I had scratched my name on the wall next to Rosalina's to show that I'd made it that far. The leaves shushed above them. River water trickled. Far away a nightingale sang. I will put your name there, said Max. I promise. Eyes closed, she whispered, Thank you. Max stared into the night, unable to settle. What horrible fate would Isadora face if she was caught and taken back to Abismo? Worry squeezed him. Something fierce and expansive mushroomed inside of him, something much bigger than his search for his mother, like enormous protective wings, beating with the resolve to deliver Isadora to safety, no matter what.